think of a planet where you have a middle-class world using the U.S. as the standard. Can the planet take it?
What does it cost the Earth? We have more complicated questions. They get very technical and lots of syllables and all that. But those are pretty simple words. What does it cost the Earth?
One of the big problems in the world today is that although the United States, for example, is now the leading destroyer of the environment, countries like China and India are fighting for the privilege of overtaking us and passing us.
Perpetual growth on a finite Earth is a logical absurdity.
When you have many, many people, it creates a density. It creates a demand and burden on the environment. Humankind is very, very unique. It can control its environment. It has the ability to transmit knowledge and information and to adapt and to change. We are an ability to change our fertility, mortality, and migration patterns. Birds may change their migration patterns because of changes in the weather or changes in conditions, but humans can change them at a drop of a pin.
It took thousands of centuries for humans to evolve from nomadic hunter-gatherers to farmers, settling in towns and villages. With a secure food supply came greater health and increased fertility. By the late 18th century, theorists like Thomas Malthus hypothesized that human population would grow at a greater rate than food production, resulting in misery and famine unless checked by birth control. The forces of nature, which controlled animal populations in the wild, were no match for the ingenuity of humans.
What happened was you started having people able to control death. Infants were dying less. You had public health measures, washing your hands, washing the bottle, sterilization, all sorts of innovation coming about in modern medicine and public health, sewage treatment, and so on. This meant that the population would not crash, but it would continue increasing. It would start increasing almost geometrically, almost exponentially. The making of projections is very much a science as well as an art. We know certain things. For example, the obvious. Everyone is born at age 0. You can't come into the world when you're 25. You have to be born at age 0. Second assumption, everyone's going to die. For demographers, it's given. No matter what age, life expectancy you have, eventually you're going to die. Those are two important ingredients. Third, it's a closed system. Everyone that's here is here. We have no one coming from outer space, no aliens coming in. It's a closed system. Those three ingredients are the basic building blocks for demography. As remarkable as it sounds, if fertility remains constant, that's our constant variant, the world's population by 2150 would be an incredible 296 billion people. Clearly, this is not a sustainable number. the world's population at 296 would be a very large burden on the Earth's resources. How many people can the world carry? It depends on, one, what kind of world do you want to have? Do you all wish to live and survive as a country such as Bangladesh? Do you wish to live as people live at the city of Manhattan? Can the world live at 6, 7 billion? Certainly. But as you go up, there are certain costs involved. Certain costs in terms of what you do to the environment, what you do for the economy, what you do.
After 4 billion years, roughly, of just being one more animal, in the last 50 or so years, we have gotten to the point where we are dramatically altering the gaseous composition of our atmosphere, where we have changed every square inch of the surface of the planet one way or another, degrading dramatically something on the order of a half of the land surface and changing it so it no longer can give us what it used to give us. We have put toxic substances all over the planet. We have changed the course of rivers. We have destroyed many of the coral reefs, and maybe in 10 or 15 years, coral reefs will be gone everywhere. These are the biggest structures made by animals on our planet. So the biggest change is that the scale of the human enterprise has gotten much too large to be sustainably supported by the natural systems upon which it depends. We are burning our natural capital. We inherited from the planet a vast inheritance of natural capital, an inheritance of wealth that was just amazing. And like the profligate son, what we're doing is spending it like there was no tomorrow.
Science and technology have become the tools of modern civilization. From antibiotics to microchips, they have helped conquer disease and search the far reaches of the galaxy. Simpler tools, like modern mining and drilling equipment, helped extract the fuels that powered unprecedented global development. Agricultural fertilizers, synthesized from nitrogen, helped grow food that supported the burgeoning population.
Taken together, these inventions have made it possible to do something that humans never could do before, and that is remove from the air the nitrogen and put it into the biosphere. Pull out all manner of minerals from the earth and put them into that same fragile film of biosphere. And this is the heart of the Industrial Revolution. It is also the source of the damage that we're doing to the biosphere that supports us.
We use rivers and atmospheres as garbage dumps. Now, it's fine when there were only a few people and they didn't consume much. You could throw your garbage into the river and natural cleansing processes would cleanse it. You could dump your sewage in the river and still drink the water a couple of miles downstream because there were natural systems that would cleanse it. As soon as you got huge populations, those natural systems became overburdened. As soon as you started putting in unique chemicals that natural systems had no experience with, our synthetic chemicals, the natural systems couldn't take care of them. So it's very hard for people to realize that there's no way to throw things to. That in fact we're stuck on this planet with things that have to be destroyed, recycled, turned back into nutrients after they become waste and so on. All of that's done by natural systems for us. And if we did not have properly functioning natural ecosystems, we would have no economy at all, because those natural ecosystems supply us with services that are generally free and that support our lives. What kind of services are they? They control the gaseous quality of the atmosphere and therefore the climate and the weather. That's kind of important to us. For example, agriculture is utterly dependent on climate and weather. They pollinate our crops. They control the vast majority of the pests that might attack our crops. In fact, if we did not have the natural pest control services, we wouldn't have any food. They supply us with food from the sea. They control the hydrologic cycle that brings us fresh water. They generate and maintain the soils that make agriculture and forestry possible and make those soils fertile. Without natural ecosystem services, we wouldn't have any fertile soils. They prevent floods. Wherever we cut down natural ecosystems and destroy them in watersheds, we end up with flooding. So they're absolutely essential, but they're not priced. They're not in the market. People don't know their value, dollar value. They were going for billions of years before human beings appeared, and so we totally take them for granted.
The marketplace, which our civilization depends upon to get informed about what to do next, because they're talking about price. The marketplace doesn't know what a tree is worth. A tree is worth what you can get out of her pulp, and 1 tree out of 5 is pulp to make paper, or what you can do with wood products such as 2x4s. Not a word about what a tree does for carbon dioxide. They love carbon dioxide and exude oxygen. I use it myself. I'd rather have it than not. And then I like to drink water. And the trees, wherever they are, do an awful lot of good things for the quality and quantity of water that we can use. It's fresh water, and there isn't that much fresh water on Earth, and we're short of it. And then they do something about soil. And soil is a very good idea. It's not just dirt. It's the source of all life we have anything to do with. And trees are an important part of it. And they're an important part of the life cycles of millions of species, most of which we haven't discovered. And we're getting rid of them 1,000 times faster than nature did. So there's water, there's soil, there's carbon dioxide, there is oxygen, there is habitat. All of them ignored by the marketplace, as is beauty. So they'll tell you about pulp and 2x4s, nothing about anything important.
The industrial ethic that sees natural resources and wilderness as a vast reservoir of raw materials awaiting exploitation grew out of the manifest destiny theories of the 19th century. One of the first voices to oppose this notion of progress was John Muir, an amateur geologist, botanist, and self-described tramp. His poetic ruminations on the majesty and wholeness of nature, composed as he hiked and climbed mountains throughout the world, form the Bible of the environmental consciousness movement.
Wonderful how completely everything in wild nature fits into us, as if truly part and parent of us. The sun shines not on us, but in us. The rivers flow not past, but through us. Thrilling, tingling, vibrating every fiber and cell of the substance of our bodies, making them glide and sing. The trees wave, and the flowers bloom in our bodies as well as our souls. And every bird song, wind song, and tremendous storm song of the rocks in the heart of the mountains is our song, our very own, and sings our love. The grand show is eternal. It is always sunrise somewhere, and the dew is never all dried at once. A shower is forever falling, vapor ever rising. Eternal sunrise, eternal sunset, eternal dawn and gloaming on the seas and continents and islands, each in its turn, as the round earth rolls.
After founding the Sierra Club, John Muir lobbied hard for the creation of the national park system and the preservation of the wilderness. But the battle between those who favor progress and those who speak for the forests is far from over.
The basic problem that a corporation is given the rights of a person, but nobody required that it have conscience. And I just like to see some corporations get the idea that a little conscience won't hurt. In fact, that's exactly what is needed, and I come up with quips on that one. There'll be no corporations on a dead planet, so why do you keep trying to kill it? They don't know how much that is costing the Earth. And that is the most important question I think everybody should ask about everything he or she does. And we're the only species that needs to. What does it cost the Earth? What does it cost the future?
How do you price an environment when you only have one of them? It's very, very hard to make true environmentalism fit into an econometric model. And my hunch is that we're going to have to learn simply to recognize sustainability as an objective. This is a word that's now beginning to be heard. And the point there is your primary objective is to keep the system working so it doesn't deteriorate, so it doesn't degenerate, so future generations have at least as much as you have. If you do that, sustainability may not be an economic goal, but it could be your overriding goal. And then you say to the economist, fit your models into that.
I wrote The Population Bomb in 1968. That time there were 3.5 billion people in the world. And lots of people jumped all over me and said, listen, with the wonderful advances we're going to have in technology, we're going to be easily able to feed, house, clothe, take care of, give wonderful medical care to 5 billion people or more. Well, here we are at 6 billion or more, and all of a sudden we see that A, technology hasn't done that yet, but B, the same idiots or the same kinds of idiots are still around saying, not to worry, yeah, billions of people aren't leading decent lives today, but in the future, technology is going to be able to run our life support systems, feed everybody, no problem. Now, a beautiful experiment was run by the technologists. They decided that they were going to show how this could be done by creating a thing called Biosphere 2. It was basically a gigantic greenhouse set in the Arizona desert. And they took, I believe it was 8 people, and stuck them in there with their totally self-supported, designed by human beings, life support systems. And what happened is they damn near starved to death and almost died as the gases in the atmosphere changed. They got huge concentrations of gases that were poisonous. The oxygen level dropped. They lost all the pollinators that were going to pollinate their crops, went extinct. Crazy ants went wild. And actually they ended up sneaking in candy bars. It wasn't really a self-sustaining system. They had a huge generator supplying it with power. And what it demonstrated very clearly was something that every competent ecologist knew before they spent those millions of dollars. And that is we haven't got the slightest clue how to substitute human-made capital for our natural capital, how to support ourselves without the free supply of services from natural ecosystems, so-called ecosystem services. They are the most important part of our environment. Their destruction is the most important part of our environmental problem, and they are utterly unknown to politicians, most bureaucrats, even to many people at the EPA.
Most of the environmental devastation suffered in the 20th century came at the hands of the industrialized world. However, as improved food and health lead to increased populations in the less developed nations, the battleground is shifting. An emerging middle class in countries like India and China could place an overwhelming burden on the Earth's resources and challenge the paradigm of unencumbered growth and universal prosperity.
There is a new phenomenon in the world. We call it globalization. There is economic globalization. And I think we should also think of ecological globalization, that this is an integrated whole, and that environmental hazards in one part of the world will have impacts and implications in other parts of the world. The forest fires in Brazil are likely to have microclimatic changes elsewhere. The air pollution from China will be taken downwind into Japan and other parts of the world. So it's one neighborhood, and the environment makes neighbors of us all.
There's a poignant problem here for these poor countries trying to get richer, and that is they have neither the power nor the resolve to protect themselves environmentally. The conversion of grain lands to rangelands in Central America to supply the market for low-quality beef in the United States. And yet these governments aren't powerful enough to resist the people who think they can make some money right away. The Philippines, Indonesia, Brazil, the tropical world is being stripped in order to supply the first world market. After they put in the roads and take the woods, then the poor peasants, desperate for land, come in to try to farm that, but you can't usually farm erstwhile tropical forests. There's not enough soil. This is a desperate situation. It also means that people who are making some money out of it, other than the foreign capitalist who can walk away from it, are going to find that in a very short time that resource is gone and they don't make any more money out of it. And meanwhile, the stripped forests send the rains cascading down into the fields and destroy the fields. And while this happens, Indonesia has been burning off its forests so fast that the other Southeast Asian nations are offering help. They're trying desperately to escape from this cloud of smog that covers Malaya, Singapore, sometimes as far away as the Philippines. This is a desperate byproduct of a desperate effort to grow.
The problem of global poverty is a very real and troublesome one. I think one has to take a very, very hard look at, can the promise of prosperity and progress be made universal? Is it realistic to promise the world better standards of living in larger freedom, as the Charter of the United Nations do? One of the things that fascinates me is the question now that involves Asia, and particularly China. 1 billion poor Chinese is considered unfortunate, but 1 billion rich Chinese could be catastrophic if present technologies are what going to drive the process. Can you imagine what would happen to the world if China used energy at the same level that the United States is using energy? What would happen to the environment if the Chinese were driving cars at the rate that the US and the industrial world are driving cars?
What we, the United States and Australia and other countries should be doing is developing solar hydrogen technologies, showing that they can be deployed on a reasonably large scale, and then assisting the Chinese and the Indians in doing the same thing. The Chinese at least understand that the size of their population is a gigantic problem, and with any luck, they will start getting a declining population soon. You combine that with a solar hydrogen system, more sensible agricultural policies, and there might be a chance of getting China through to some kind of sustainability.
Technology may provide some of the solutions needed to control wastes and manage resources, but overpopulation still presents the greatest challenge. A growing concern is the plight of ecological refugees, citizens of a nation where the environment is so degraded that it no longer supports the social fabric within the country.
The problem of immigration is bedeviling every industrial country going. It is even a problem for the more prosperous of the third world countries. The growth in population, mostly during the 50s, 60s, maybe 70s, became so intense that there was simply nowhere to farm. If you don't have any land and any tools, the countryside can be a great place to start in. They began to move towards the cities first, to live on the scraps of the cities, if you will. And these poor people are living on the refuse piles and trying to pick their sustenance from them. They're creating precisely the kind of conditions from which we hoped we'd gotten away, for plague and infectious diseases. This drives people farther afield. People used to tell me that the Chinese would never live with anything but large families when I was first out there in the early 50s. The Muslims, people would say, will not tolerate deliberate efforts to control the rate of reproduction. They both do now. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan are all trying to bring fertility down. I think that those perceptions can change, and they will change only because people begin to realize the implications. If you haven't thought about population growth, you'll say, well, maybe it is immoral. If you've thought about population growth, you may change your mind and say, maybe it's immoral to have a lot of children who will starve. And I think that shift of mindset is very important.
Can we be optimistic? I think certainly. There are many problems that exist, many population issues that exist. In many parts of the world, the mortality levels are far too high for infants, children, and mothers. These have to be addressed. In addition, the density and the ability of people to choose the number of children that they wish and the spacing should also be available. Therefore, I would say that we should be optimistic based on what's happened in the past, but we should be fully cognizant that there are many problems that we have to address. And certainly population is one that we should be prepared to address now and in the coming years.
This Preserving the Legacy series is an introduction to environmental science and technology. For information or to purchase this series, call 626-796-7300.